If you're so good, fix my ship. Empress says, 28 engineers failed, a human dad succeeded. The Empress of the Andralis Galaxy sat in her grand chamber, her long fingers drumming impatiently on the polished table. Her flagship, the Starlight Ascendant, had been her pride for decades. It was a masterpiece of engineering, the largest and most advanced ship in her fleet, capable of moving faster than light and shielding itself from any known weapon. But now it was silent. Broken! And no one could fix it! 28 engineers had tried. 28 of the brightest minds in the galaxy. They came from distant worlds, each one famous for their intelligence and skill. Some were aliens whose brains could process trillions of calculations per second. Some were mechanical geniuses with cybernetic implants that let them control energy flows with mere thought. Others were from advanced starships that could manipulate matter and energy at will. Yet none had succeeded. Some had worked for days, trying to understand the ship's systems. Others had tried weeks. Every attempt ended in frustration, sparks flying, circuits overloading, and finally defeat. The Empress's patience was gone. If I cannot travel with this ship, she muttered, I cannot rule efficiently. The fleet depends on me. The galaxy expects me to lead. And yet, all my best engineers have failed. Her advisors tried to calm her. Your Majesty, said an elder diplomat from the planet Vorin, perhaps the ship is beyond repair. Some ancient systems cannot be restored. Even the galaxy's best minds cannot always succeed. The Empress slammed her fist on the table. Excuses! I do not want excuses. I want results. Then someone spoke up nervously. Your Majesty, there is a species that might surprise you.
Humans. The room went quiet. Every advisor turned toward the speaker.
Death to the turncoat. Humans. In the Andralis Galaxy, humans were considered simple, weak, and unimportant. Their technology was crude compared to other species, and their brains were ordinary. They were known for stubbornness and luck, not skill. Humans? The Empress said, raising a brow. Why would I consider a human to repair my ship? Have they not barely left their small systems? The speaker, a small green-skinned alien named Lorith, nodded. Exactly. They are underestimated, Your Majesty. They see things differently, perhaps differently enough to solve what no one else can. The Empress's golden eyes narrowed. Send me one, then. I want a human who can fix my ship, or fail, and I will know I tried everything. Far away, on a quiet asteroid orbiting a pale yellow star, a human named Tomar worked in his workshop. The asteroid was small, barely a dot on the star charts, but to Tomar, it was home. His workshop was cluttered with tools, wires, and parts of ships he had repaired. He wasn't famous, not in any galaxy-wide sense. He was just a father, working hard to maintain his little ship and to teach his young son Leo how to fix things. Dad, why does this wire keep burning out? Leo asked, holding a frayed cable. Tomar smiled, wiping his hands on a cloth. Because, Leo, it is trying to tell us something. Wires don't burn out for no reason. There's a pattern. You just have to see it. Leo frowned, squinting at the wire. I see sparks. That's all I see, Tomar chuckled. Sparks are just the start. Watch carefully. Listen carefully. Sometimes machines talk, if you know how to listen. They work together, quietly, their conversation soft and patient. Tomar believed in observation over force. He believed that every system, no matter how old or broken, had a logic to it. Sometimes humans had to think differently, and that was their secret. A loud knock suddenly echoed through the workshop. Tomar turned, surprised. A small shuttle hovered outside. Its markings were unfamiliar, elegant, almost regal. A holographic projection appeared, showing the Empress herself. Tomar, the projection said, voice firm but not unkind. The Starlight Ascendant is broken. 28 engineers have failed. I am sending for a human to attempt what none of the galaxy's best could. You have been chosen. Tomar blinked. Leo gasped. Chosen? But us? Yes, the Empress's projection said. You will travel to my flagship. If you succeed, the galaxy will see the value of your species. If you fail, I will know I have exhausted every option. Prepare immediately. The projection ended, leaving a quiet hum in the workshop. Tomar turned to Leo, who looked at him with wide eyes. Dad! This is huge! Huge! Tomar nodded slowly. It is! But remember what we always say, Leo. Complex problems often have simple solutions. We just need to understand the ship, listen to it, and then act. Leo grinned. I want to come with you, Tomar laughed. No, this is my mission. But I promise I will tell you every detail. You will learn even from far away. When Tomar arrived at the Starlight Ascendant, he felt the weight of the impossible. The ship was massive, gleaming in its own energy field. He had seen many ships in his life, but none like this. Even its exterior seemed alive, humming softly as if it had a pulse. The alien engineers who had failed stared at him with disbelief. A human? One of them hissed. What can he do? He doesn't even understand hyperquantum drives. Another sneered, cybernetic eyes glowing. 28 of us could not repair it. What makes you think this human will succeed? Tomar simply smiled.
I don't think. I observe.
I listen. That is often enough.
The Empress herself appeared, a figure taller than most humans, with golden eyes and silver robes that shimmered like the stars. If you are so clever, human, she said, voice echoing through the corridors, fix my ship.
28 of my best have failed.
You have 1 week. Fail, and you return home. Tomar nodded. Understood, Your Majesty. I will try my best. The first few days were difficult. The ship's systems were unlike anything Tomar had seen. Wires glowed with strange colors, energy loops hummed in unpredictable rhythms, and the controls responded in ways that defied normal logic. The alien engineers had already tried brute force, attempting to rewrite codes, adjust circuits, and reboot energy flows. But nothing worked. Tomar, however, did not panic. He moved slowly, carefully, inspecting each panel and console. He asked questions, not because anyone could answer them, but because speaking aloud helped him think. Leo, watching through a communication link, cheered for every small success. Dad, you are figuring it out! Tomar smiled. Patience, Leo. Understanding takes time. He noticed patterns others missed. A subtle vibration in the core, a rhythm in the energy flow, a tiny misalignment in the main drive. Others had seen the same things but ignored them, assuming advanced systems required advanced solutions. Tomar knew better. Sometimes humans succeeded because they thought differently. They asked why, not just how. They observed, learned, adapted. By the 4th day, small progress became visible. Panels that had been dark flickered to life. Energy loops that had been dead for decades began humming faintly. The alien engineers watched in disbelief. This human. He's doing what we could not, whispered one of the older engineers. How? How is this possible? Tomar ignored them, focusing on the task. He worked late into the artificial night, his hands steady, his mind calm. He thought about his son, about the lessons he had taught Leo about patience, observation, and understanding. Those lessons, learned in a quiet workshop on a tiny asteroid, were what made him human, and what might save the Empress's ship. By the end of the week, Tomar had uncovered the true problem. The ship's core was not broken in the way anyone expected. It was not a malfunction, but a misalignment caused by centuries of minor adjustments. Each previous engineer had tried to force the system, override it, or bypass it entirely. None had listened. None had understood. Tomar smiled softly. He could fix this. Not with brute force, not with complex calculations, but with careful, deliberate adjustment. The Empress entered the control room. "Human," she said, her voice sharper now. "1 week has passed. Have you succeeded?" Tomar looked at her, calm.
I am ready, Your Majesty.
He moved to the main console, touching controls with gentle hands. He aligned energy flows, synchronized circuits, and listened to the subtle hums and vibrations.
Slowly, the ship began to respond. Lights flickered on, energy flowed smoothly, and a quiet vibration filled the room, like the ship was breathing again. The alien engineers gasped. 28 of them had failed! 1 human had succeeded. The Empress's eyes widened. "Impossible," she whispered. Tomar looked at her, smiling gently. "Not impossible, just human." The corridors of the Starlight Ascendant were vast and echoing, filled with lights that shimmered like stars. Tomar walked carefully, his human boots clicking softly against the polished floor. He had never been on a ship this big. Even the largest human freighter seemed tiny compared to this flagship. Panels stretched higher than he could reach, consoles blinked endlessly, and strange hums filled every corner. The alien engineers who had failed before lingered behind him. Their expressions were a mix of disbelief, fear, and curiosity. They whispered among themselves, trying to understand how a human, just 1 human, a simple father from a small asteroid, had the nerve, let alone the skill, to approach what they had failed to repair. "This human, he can't possibly understand these systems," muttered one, a tall blue-skinned engineer with multi-fingered hands. Another, whose cybernetic eyes scanned every panel, automatically hissed, "His species is primitive. Look at his tools! Ordinary wrenches and hand scanners!"
Ridiculous! Tomar ignored them.
He didn't need fancy tools. He had something far more important: observation, patience, and a mind willing to see the hidden patterns others missed.
He approached the main control panel. Energy readings flickered in ways that were inconsistent. Some subsystems tried to function while others refused. The ship was alive, but wounded. He could feel it. Not literally, of course, but in the way humans often sensed things. Through careful attention. Through listening. "Dad, a communication link buzzed softly." Leo's young voice came through. "Are you sure you know what you're doing? Even the aliens said this was impossible." Tomar smiled.
Impossible is just a word, Leo. I know what I need to do.
Remember, we listen first, we act second. That is the human way. "Okay," Leo said. "I'll watch and learn." For hours, Tomar studied the systems. He mapped energy flows with paper, wrote down notes, and traced circuits with his fingers. The alien engineers scoffed at this method. "Why waste time with primitive paper?" they whispered. "Why not just run simulations?" Tomar heard them but didn't respond. He had seen this arrogance before. Brilliance often blinded aliens. They saw speed and power as intelligence, not careful thought. And that was where humans excelled. Humans thought differently. They noticed small things. They adapted. And in this galaxy, adaptability often beat raw power. By the second day, Tomar had made small progress. A panel that had been dead for decades blinked faintly. Energy hummed through one of the subsystems. The aliens froze, watching with disbelief. "What is he doing?" whispered the blue-skinned engineer. "We tried all possible calculations, all logic sequences. How is this human succeeding?" Tomar, as usual, ignored them. He moved to the ship's core, the massive heart of the Starlight Ascendant. Here, the energy vibrations were strongest. This was where he had to act carefully. "One wrong adjustment could cause overloads or worse, permanent damage." He laid his hands on the core console and closed his eyes for a moment. He listened. The ship's hums, its faint vibrations, the patterns in the flickering lights, they all spoke to him. To anyone else, it was just noise, but Tomar had learned to listen to machines. He could sense where the energy was blocked, where circuits resisted flow, where systems tried to hide their true functions. Ha! Interesting, he murmured. The problem isn't a failure. It's resistance.
A hidden misalignment. I can work with this.
By the third day, the alien engineers were growing desperate. They tried again and again, pushing their simulations and tools.
Some attempted brute force energy resets. Others reprogrammed sections of the ship.
Every attempt failed spectacularly. Lights blinked in dangerous rhythms, warning systems tripped, and some sections went completely offline.
The Empress herself came down to observe. She was impatient and curious, walking silently behind Tomar.
"Human," she said, her voice low but commanding. "If you cannot repair my ship soon, I will find another species. I am tired of waiting."
Tomar looked at her calmly. "Your Majesty, I do not rush. The ship has a rhythm."
Huh. I only need to understand it fully before acting. One misstep could make it worse.
The Empress raised an eyebrow. "I have seen 28 engineers fail."
How can a single human succeed where all others failed?
Tomar smiled faintly. "Because humans listen."
Others try to force. We try to understand.
The days passed slowly. Tomar moved through the ship like a quiet storm. He worked on hidden subsystems, tracing energy flows, aligning circuits, adjusting tiny mechanisms that had been ignored for centuries. He noticed details that the alien engineers had missed entirely. A micro-vibration in the main drive, a subtle hum in the stabilization field, a misaligned power node buried under layers of complex tech. He worked with precision, always testing and observing. Every adjustment he made caused small improvements. Sections that had been dead for decades slowly came to life. The hum of the ship changed, subtly, like it was waking up. By the 5th day, even the Empress was noticing the difference.
"The ship! It is responding!" she whispered to one of her aides.
"Something is happening. I cannot believe it." The alien engineers were terrified and fascinated.
"What? How?" one of them asked. "He is not using advanced calculations."
He does not understand hyperquantum dynamics. Yet the ship reacts.
Tomar worked without fear. He moved to the main energy conduits, gently adjusting flow patterns with careful hands. He reconnected circuits using simple tools, realigning them by observing how the energy pulsed. Slowly, the ship's systems began to harmonize. The stabilization fields, which had been failing for years, started to hum in perfect rhythm. Power loops that had refused to function now flowed evenly. The lights flickered and glowed steadily, no longer chaotic.
Even the alien engineers could not deny it.
He is succeeding, whispered one.
Impossible! Humans should not be capable of this.
On the 6th day, Tomar faced the final challenge, the hypercore, the heart of the ship. It was a vast, glowing chamber full of energy waves that pulsed like a heartbeat. Every previous engineer had attempted to force the core back online using their strongest techniques. Every attempt failed. The core resisted.
It was a riddle, a puzzle, a challenge meant to test the best minds in the galaxy. Tomar approached carefully.
He noticed a pattern others had ignored. Tiny fluctuations in the energy waves were repeating, like a hidden code. He traced them with his hands, feeling the flow, the rhythm, the heartbeat of the ship.
"This is it,"
he whispered.
"The ship is not broken. It is just
misaligned." He worked slowly, adjusting nodes, realigning circuits, syncing energy flows. Every movement was deliberate, every adjustment precise. Slowly, the core began to respond. It hummed more steadily, energy flowing in perfect rhythm. The alien engineers watched in stunned silence. Their jaws hung open. How is he doing this?" one whispered. "We could not even sense these patterns."
we only pushed, forced, calculated. And he
listens. By the 7th day, the Starlight Ascendant was almost alive again. Panels glowed, systems hummed, and energy flowed as smoothly as the day the Empress had commissioned it. Tomar checked every subsystem twice, ensuring that the ship was stable. The Empress walked into the control room, her eyes wide with amazement. "Human!" she said, her voice a mixture of shock and respect. This is impossible!"
28 engineers failed. You have restored my ship alone. How?
Tomar smiled, humble. "I did not force the ship. I listened. I observed. I worked with it, not against it. Sometimes understanding is stronger than power, Your Majesty." The Empress studied him, her golden eyes softening.
You are extraordinary, not because of your technology or strength, but because of your mind. You think differently, and that is what the galaxy has underestimated.
The alien engineers looked ashamed, realizing that they had been arrogant. They had relied on brute force, simulations, and advanced tools, but the human had succeeded with observation, patience, and insight. Tomar nodded to them.
There is no shame in failing. There is only learning. But sometimes, thinking differently is the key. Later, in a quiet corner of the ship, Tomar communicated with Leo. "Son, the ship is responding perfectly now. I will finish the final adjustments tomorrow. But remember, humans have an advantage.
We notice what others ignore. We think differently.
And that is why we succeed."
Leo's voice buzzed with excitement.
"I knew you could do it, Dad! You're amazing!"
Tomar chuckled softly. "It's not about being amazing. It's about listening, observing, and understanding."
Always remember that, Leo. As the human dad worked, the ship seemed to come alive around him.
The hum of energy was steady, the lights glowed warmly, and the massive vessel no longer felt like an impossible challenge. It was as if the ship itself trusted the human, accepting his careful, patient guidance. The galaxy's best engineers could only watch in awe, learning a lesson they had not expected. Sometimes raw intelligence and power are not enough. Sometimes it is the human heart and mind working together that can solve the impossible. The Starlight Ascendant glowed under its own regained energy, humming like a giant heart that had begun to beat again. Tomar walked through the corridors, his steps calm and deliberate. Each panel he passed reflected faint blue and gold lights, systems coming back online after decades of neglect. The ship seemed almost alive, responding to his presence with subtle vibrations that only someone who truly listened could sense. The alien engineers trailed behind him, their confidence now replaced with quiet unease. For the first time, they were unsure of themselves.
How could one human succeed where they had failed so spectacularly? Their pride was wounded, but curiosity overpowered their ego.
The Empress appeared beside Tomar in the main hall, her presence commanding yet thoughtful. "Human," she said, her voice softer than usual, "your progress is remarkable, but the hypercore, is still offline."
The ship cannot function fully without it. Are you certain you can succeed?
Tomar nodded. "I believe so, Your Majesty."
The core is not broken, only misaligned. It requires attention, understanding, and patience. The Empress' golden eyes narrowed slightly. You have one chance. Fail here, and I will have no choice but to accept that even a human cannot restore my flagship. Tomar smiled faintly. One chance is all we ever need. The hypercore chamber was massive, its ceiling stretching impossibly high, energy arcs dancing like tiny stars trapped in a web. The core itself pulsed, its glow irregular, flickering with unpredictable rhythms. Every previous engineer had approached this chamber with brute force. They had tried to inject energy, reroute power, override circuits, and force the systems into operation. Every attempt had failed, leaving the core unstable, dangerous, and stubborn. Tomar studied the core carefully.
He placed his hands lightly on a console, feeling the vibrations, the subtle hums that spoke of the core's internal conflicts.
Unlike others, he did not see only circuits and energy.
He saw a pattern, a rhythm hidden beneath the chaos.
This is not just a machine,
he murmured to himself.
It has a life, a heartbeat, I need to synchronize with it, not control it.
The alien engineers watched in silence. Their own methods had failed because they ignored the life of the core.
They treated it as a problem to be crushed with power. Tomar treated it as a partner to understand.
For hours, he worked methodically. He adjusted tiny conduits, realigned microscopic energy channels, and calibrated stabilization fields by hand. He listened to the fluctuations, traced them, and responded. Every movement was deliberate. He spoke quietly to himself, mapping the vibrations like a musical composition. The aliens whispered among themselves.
He is not using any technology we would expect, one muttered. He touches the core as if he feels it.
As if he can understand it. Yes, another replied.
It is uncanny. But he is succeeding where we have failed. Impossible. Tomar ignored them.
His mind was focused entirely on the core. He noticed tiny mismatches, small misalignments that had caused decades of instability. No one else had looked at these details because they were too small, too subtle.
But humans had patience. Humans noticed what others overlooked. As the day turned into night within the ship's artificial time, Tomar reached the critical moment.
The core's energy flow was still irregular, but he had traced the problem to a single hidden node buried deep within the system.
This node controlled the synchronization of multiple subsystems and had been misaligned for centuries.
The node, Tomar whispered. This is it.
Fix this, and the whole ship comes alive.
He carefully adjusted the node, feeling its subtle resistance, listening to the change in vibrations. For a moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, the energy patterns began to align. A low hum rose, steady and powerful. The flickering lights in the core chamber stabilized. The hypercore pulsed with a rhythm so perfect it seemed almost alive. The alien engineers gasped. The Empress stepped forward, her golden eyes widening in disbelief.
How? How is this possible? She whispered. 28 of the galaxy's greatest minds failed, and you, a single human, have succeeded?
Tomar smiled faintly.
Your Majesty, the core was never broken. It was confused, misaligned, waiting for someone to understand it. We humans, we listen before we act. Suddenly, the core pulsed brighter than ever before.
Energy flowed through the ship like rivers of light, systems activating one by one. Navigation, weapons, shields, life support, everything synchronized perfectly.
The starlight ascended was alive again, more stable and powerful than before. The alien engineers could only stare. Their pride was shattered, their arrogance humbled. They had relied on advanced calculations, brute force, and complex tools.
Tomar had relied on observation, patience, and a human mind willing to understand what others ignored. One of the engineers finally whispered aloud.
We were wrong. Humans, they think differently. That is why he succeeded.
The Empress approached Tomar, her expression shifting from disbelief to awe.
You have done what none could imagine, she said.
You have restored my flagship, not with raw power, not with advanced technology, but with your mind. With your understanding. Tomar shook his head.
I did not do it alone. I worked with the ship.
I listened. Humans succeed not because of force, but because we pay attention.
We notice what others miss. We adapt. That is how we survive, how we overcome impossible challenges. The Empress studied him carefully. And yet,
you are so humble after all this. You do not boast. You do not demand reward.
You simply do what is needed.
Tomar smiled softly.
I am a human. We do what is needed, because it must be done.
We do not seek glory, but when our actions help others, that is reward enough.
That evening, Tomar took a quiet walk through the corridors of the flagship. The ship hummed gently, responding to his presence. Panels glowed with steady energy. Systems flowed with perfect harmony. He could feel the life of the ship in a way that no calculation, no tool, no artificial intelligence could ever replicate. The alien engineers trailed silently behind him. They did not speak, for they had no words to describe what they had just witnessed. For the first time in their lives, they understood that intelligence alone was not enough. Sometimes the human heart and mind together could achieve the impossible. In a small corner, Leo's voice buzzed through the communication link.
Dad! Is it really working? Did you do it?
Tomar chuckled softly.
Yes, Leo. The ship is alive. Stronger than before. It is stable and ready to serve the Empress.
But remember, this is just one example. Humans succeed because we notice what others miss, because we adapt, and because we never give up. Leo's voice trembled with excitement.
I knew you could do it! You're amazing, Dad, Tomar smiled. It's not about being amazing. It's about thinking differently. That is the human advantage. The Empress called Tomar to the main hall. Her advisors and the alien engineers waited, their expressions a mix of awe and humility.
She held a ceremonial medal in her hand, an honor reserved only for those who had performed extraordinary feats. Human, she said, her voice echoing through the chamber, you have proven what many thought impossible.
You have shown the galaxy that humans, though underestimated, are capable of incredible ingenuity and wisdom. For your courage, patience, and understanding, I award you this honor. Tomar accepted it quietly, bowing respectfully. He knew the medal was symbolic, but more importantly, it represented something far greater. Recognition of the human mind, its creativity, and its perseverance.
The alien engineers stepped forward one by one, offering nods of respect. They no longer scoffed at humans. They had learned a lesson that would stay with them forever. Never underestimate the ingenuity of a human. Later, in the quiet of the ship's observation deck, Tomar gazed at the stars with Leo through a live feed.
Son, he said softly, tonight you saw something important. Humans are not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most advanced.
But we notice what others miss. We adapt.
We understand. And that is why we can overcome the impossible.
Leo nodded, his eyes shining with pride.
I understand, Dad.
Humans really can do amazing things.
Tomar smiled. Yes, we can.
But we must always be humble, always be curious, and always remember to listen. That is our greatest strength.
The starlight ascendant hummed gently beneath them, alive and ready, a testament to the human mind. Across the galaxy, those who had doubted humans would never forget what had just happened. One simple human father had restored the flagship that no species, no engineer, no genius could repair. And in doing so, he had reminded the galaxy of the greatest truth about humanity. Never underestimate a human who thinks differently. The starlight ascendant gleamed under its own power, humming like a heart finally at peace. Tomar stood in the main hall, watching as systems across the ship lit up in perfect harmony. Panels glowed, energy flowed steadily, and the massive flagship seemed alive in a way that no one had seen for decades. The Empress of the Andralis galaxy entered the hall, her long silver robes swaying, her golden eyes fixed on the human before her. For the first time, she looked at him not as a simple human, not as an underwhelming species, but as an equal, a master of understanding.
You have done what none of the galaxy's finest could achieve, she said, her voice echoing softly through the hall.
28 engineers failed. You, one human, succeeded.
How can this be?
Tomar bowed respectfully. Your Majesty, the ship was never broken. It simply needed someone to listen, someone to understand it. Humans succeed not because we are stronger, but because we notice what others miss. We adapt. We think differently. The Empress studied him for a long moment, her expression shifting from disbelief to admiration.
You have proven humans are capable of brilliance.
You have reminded me, and the galaxy, of what was long forgotten. That sometimes the smallest, most underestimated species can achieve the greatest feats. Word of Tomar's achievement spread quickly. Hollow messages and signals traversed the galaxy faster than light, reaching every corner. Other species, once dismissive of humans, sent inquiries and requests for cooperation. The human species had earned respect, admiration, and even a cautious awe from civilizations that had previously considered them inferior. The alien engineers who had failed before approached Tomar cautiously. One, the blue-skinned engineer whose arrogance had been unmatched, stepped forward and bowed.
Human, we were wrong, he admitted. We relied on power, on complexity, on brute force. You relied on patience, observation, and understanding. That is why you succeeded. I will never underestimate your species again. Another engineer, the one with cybernetic eyes, nodded in agreement. Your mind works differently than ours, yet it achieves what we cannot. This is remarkable. Tomar smiled politely. There is no shame in failure. There is only the opportunity to learn. Humans succeed because we adapt, notice, and understand. Perhaps if you observe differently, you may succeed next time as well. The Empress held a ceremonial medal in her hand, polished and gleaming. It was an honor reserved for those who had performed extraordinary feats for the galaxy. She stepped toward Tomar. Human, on behalf of the Andralis Empire and all its people, she declared, I award you the Medal of Galactic Ingenuity. You have restored my flagship, the Starlight Ascendant, and shown the galaxy that humans, though underestimated, are capable of extraordinary insight and wisdom. Tomar accepted the medal with quiet humility. He knew that the honor was symbolic, but its meaning went far deeper than decoration. It represented the recognition of humanity's ingenuity, patience, and capacity to achieve what seemed impossible. That evening, Tomar found a quiet corner on the observation deck. Through the transparent dome above, the stars stretched endlessly. His son Leo appeared on the communication link, eyes shining with excitement. Dad, everyone is talking about you. Even the aliens respect humans now. You're amazing. Tomar smiled softly. I am not amazing, Leo. I just listened. I watched. I understood. That is what humans do best. We notice things others ignore, we adapt, and we persevere. But Dad, Leo said, don't you feel proud? I mean, one human fixed the impossible ship. Tomar laughed quietly. Pride is fleeting. What matters is that we did what needed to be done, and we helped the galaxy. That is enough. The young boy nodded, absorbing every word. I want to be like you, Dad. I want to think differently, notice things, and help others too. You will, Leo? Tomar said. Humans have that in them. Always. The next day, the Empress invited Tomar to the Grand Council chamber. Representatives from dozens of species were gathered, curious to see the human who had accomplished the impossible. Some watched skeptically. Others whispered among themselves. But all eyes were on Tomar as he entered. Human, the Empress said, you have demonstrated a quality that the galaxy has long ignored, the unique ingenuity of your species. You have reminded us all that intelligence is not measured by power or technology alone. Sometimes understanding and creativity are far greater. Tomar nodded respectfully. Your Majesty, humans have learned to survive through curiosity, observation, and adaptability. These are the tools that allow us to overcome challenges that seem impossible. Any species can learn to think differently and succeed if they listen carefully. The chamber erupted in applause and murmurs of amazement. Alien representatives approached Tomar, offering their congratulations and questions about human techniques, curious how his species could achieve so much with what seemed like simple methods. As the days passed, Tomar became a symbol of human ingenuity across the galaxy. Ships that had been abandoned were restored. Projects thought impossible were attempted. Humans, once dismissed as clumsy and weak, became sought after for their insight and creativity. Even the alien engineers who had once laughed at him now asked for his guidance. They studied his methods, learning to observe and understand systems instead of forcing solutions.
Humility replaced arrogance. Respect replaced doubt. But Tomar did not change. He remained the same humble human who had worked in a small asteroid workshop with his son. He continued to teach Leo, sharing lessons about observation, patience, and understanding. He reminded the galaxy that humans succeeded not because of power or advanced technology, but because of their mind and heart working together. One evening, Tomar stood at the observation deck once more, looking at the stars. Leo's voice buzzed through the communication link.
Dad, the galaxy is talking about us! Humans are respected everywhere. This is amazing.
Tomar smiled.
It is amazing, yes.
But remember, Leo, respect is earned not by pride, not by showing off, but by actions. By helping, understanding, and never giving up.
That is the human way, Leo nodded. I understand, Dad.
I want to be like you. You already are, Tomar said.
Every human is. We notice what others ignore. We adapt, we care.
And that is why we succeed. The Starlight Ascendant became a symbol of human potential.
Across the galaxy, species who had once underestimated humans now sought them out for cooperation, advice, and guidance.
The Empress, once doubtful, now regarded humans with deep respect, recognizing that even the smallest and seemingly weakest species could achieve extraordinary feats. In quiet workshops on small asteroids, in simple human homes, children listened to tales of ingenuity, patience, and clever thinking. They learned that humans did not always rely on strength or speed, but on understanding and creativity. They learned that anyone, regardless of size, species, or background, could achieve the impossible. Tomar returned to his quiet asteroid eventually, resuming his simple life of repairs and lessons with Leo. But everywhere he went, humans were celebrated, not as invaders, not as warriors, but as thinkers, problem solvers, and creators. They had proven the galaxy wrong, and in doing so, they had earned a place of honor among the stars. And so, the legend of the human father who restored the Empress's ship spread across the galaxy. 28 engineers had failed. One human succeeded. The galaxy remembered that day not for the power of advanced technology, not for the intelligence of alien minds, but for the quiet, determined, clever heart of humanity.
Humans had been underestimated. Humans had been doubted.
And humans had triumphed.